Elon Musk thought he was alone, until he heard a whisper through his son's bedroom door. It wasn't a question. It wasn't for help. It was a 5-year-old's prayer for his father's smile. Now Elon must face the one thing his success never prepared him for, being truly seen. What do you do when your child sees what you've been hiding from yourself? Before we continue this incredible story, let us know where you're watching from. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow we have another inspiring story you won't want to miss. It was nearly midnight when Elon Musk stepped into the hallway of his California home, the sharp edges of another endless day still clinging to his shoulders. His tie hung loose around his neck, half forgotten, while his suit jacket had been abandoned in the back seat of a car he barely remembered parking. The house was quiet, eerily quiet, the kind of silence that doesn't soothe, but presses in on you, reminding you of everything you've ignored. Just hours earlier, Elon had been deep in a tense debate over Starlink logistics, hammering out timelines and troubleshooting delays. His mind had been buried in orbital data, funding projections, and launch windows. But now, in the hush of his hallway, none of that followed him, only exhaustion. As he passed by his 5-year-old son's room, he didn't intend to stop. X was surely asleep. There'd been no bedtime story tonight, no kiss on the forehead, again. But something, a sliver of sound or maybe instinct, made him pause. The door was ajar. Barely, just enough for a voice to slip out, a tiny voice. "God," the boy whispered, "help Daddy smile again." Elon froze. The hallway seemed to tighten around him. No requests for toys, no complaints, just that, one quiet prayer. He didn't open the door. He just stood there, and everything changed. Elon backed away from the doorway like a man waking from a dream he hadn't meant to enter. His hand fell from the frame and his footsteps carried him slowly down the hall toward the kitchen. He didn't turn on the lights, didn't glance at his phone. He just walked, one step at a time, as if drawn by something he couldn't explain. The room welcomed him with stillness. No glowing screens, no buzzing notifications, just the faint hum of the refrigerator and the sound of his own breathing. He sat down at the table without thinking. No agenda, no whiteboard waiting to be filled, just a chair, a dark room, and the words still ringing in his head. "Help Daddy smile again." It wasn't a cry for toys or attention. It wasn't even for his son. It was for him. For the father who hadn't been fully present in days, maybe weeks, maybe longer. And it wasn't guilt that filled him. It was something else. It was the strange, humbling awareness of being seen, not by shareholders or news anchors or engineers, but by a 5-year-old boy in the dark, whispering to God. And suddenly, Elon didn't want to move. Elon didn't sleep that night. He sat at the kitchen table long after the refrigerator's hum became white noise. In the quiet, memories began to rise, ones he hadn't invited but couldn't push away. Missed dinners, rushed goodnights, canceled Saturdays. The time X built a Lego rocket and waited by the door, hoping his dad would come home early to see it. The picture still sat on Elon's desk, dusty and half obscured by blueprints. At the time, it hadn't seemed like a big deal, but now, each forgotten moment returned like a slow, quiet ache. He wasn't proud of it. He'd told himself it was for a greater cause, advancing humanity, solving global problems, building the future. But sitting alone in the dark, the future felt far away. What mattered now was a whisper from a bedroom, soft, honest, and piercing. By morning, he hadn't moved much, just sat, watched the sunrise over the edge of the window frame, and tried to understand how something so small could hit so deep. X wandered into the kitchen in mismatched socks, dragging his blanket behind him. He blinked sleepily when he saw his dad already sitting there. "Did you sleep on the couch again?" he asked. Sort of, Elon replied, voice low. Are you sad? X asked quietly. Elon hesitated. Then X leaned against the table. Is it because you heard me? Elon looked up, startled. You knew I was there? X shrugged. I felt it. Then came the sentence that stopped everything. I talk to God when I miss you. Elon's throat tightened. He canceled 2 meetings that day. Not because someone told him to, not because he was exhausted, but because he wanted to. For once, not for a launch window or a boardroom, just to be there. For love. Elon started showing up. Not just physically, but fully. He drove X to school 2 days in a row, a record in their house. The first morning, X kept glancing at him in the rearview mirror, unsure if this was a fluke. Elon noticed but didn't say anything. Instead, he asked about the weather, then about a book X had been reading. It wasn't much, but it was a beginning. At the playground after school, Elon sat on a bench, hands folded in his lap, watching X climb the jungle gym. There were no assistants with him, no bodyguards hovering in the background, no phone buzzing on his hip, just sunlight, scattered laughter, and the faint smell of wood chips. He smiled when X ran over, breathless from the slide, and asked if he wanted to help build a rocket ship out of sticks. They knelt in the grass, and for a while it was just play. Then, out of nowhere, X paused and looked up at him. Do you think God listens? He asked. Elon blinked. Listens to what? To us. When we talk to him. Elon hesitated. I don't know, he admitted. I'm not sure how that works. X nodded thoughtfully, as if this wasn't a new answer but something he'd expected. Then he tilted his head. Do you ever talk to him? Elon shifted uncomfortably. I don't really know how to pray. You don't have to know, X said quietly. You just have to mean it. That sentence hung in the air longer than Elon expected. It wasn't profound in a theological sense, but it landed hard. Just mean it. That was what had shaken him the other night. Not the words, but the weight of them. His son had meant it, every syllable. Later that evening, Elon sat at the edge of his bed, the room dimly lit by a single lamp. The rest of the house was quiet. X had fallen asleep early, worn out from the playground and extra-long bedtime stories. Elon didn't open his laptop, didn't scroll his phone. He just sat there with those words echoing in his mind. He wasn't sure what prompted him. Maybe it was the way X had looked at him. Maybe it was the rocket made of sticks still sitting in the backseat. Or maybe it was the silence again. The same kind that had followed him into the kitchen that first night. He folded his hands, not in the formal, steepled way he remembered from childhood, but loosely, awkwardly. And then he whispered, so quietly he wasn't even sure it counted, Thank you for my son, for letting me see him, and for him seeing me. That was it. No lightning, no booming voice, just silence. But this time, it didn't feel empty. It felt like breathing in a room that had been closed too long, like air was finally moving again. And outside the door, X stirred in his sleep, just barely, almost like he knew. Elon sat at his desk, the house quiet again. Not just quiet, but soft. Something about the air felt different these nights, less like a machine idling in sleep mode and more like a world gently waiting. He reached for the top drawer of his bookshelf, the one he hadn't opened in years. Inside was a weathered tan notebook, a relic from his 20s, filled with thoughts scribbled during long nights at Zip2 and PayPal. Most of it was formulas, fragments of ideas, sketches of rockets and electric cars. But a few pages caught him off guard. Words written in pen, not pencil. Not diagrams or calculations. What happens when I run out of reasons? Does love always have to cost time? What if I never stop long enough to feel anything real? He stared at those sentences, stunned by how much younger him sounded like older him. Back then, He thought he was chasing clarity. Now he realized he was always looking for something quieter, something that would just let him be seen. Elon closed the book slowly, sat back, and then did something he hadn't done in decades. He picked up the phone and called his mother. She answered after a few rings. Her voice was groggy but kind. "Hey, Mom," he said, softly. "Elon, is everything all right? I needed to ask something." "Of course. Did I ever pray?" "When I was a kid?" There was a long pause on the other end. Then she answered, slow but certain. "Yes, you did." Elon frowned. "I don't remember." "I do," she said. "You used to kneel by your bed and ask God to help me sleep when I worked late. You thought I didn't know." He didn't know what to say. Her voice trembled slightly. "You said it like you believed it would work, and somehow it helped me rest." Elon's chest tightened. Something old inside him cracked open. Not pain exactly, not guilt, but a kind of remembering that made him sit still. That night, he didn't go to bed. Instead, he wandered to the living room and curled up on the couch, notebook in hand, blanket pulled over his shoulders. The room was dim, lit only by the street lamp outside. A faint shuffle broke the silence. Tiny footsteps. Then, from around the corner, came X Sparefoot, flashlight in one hand, a small picture Bible in the other. He paused when he saw his dad. "You're awake," X said. Elon smiled faintly. "So are you." X nodded. "Sometimes night is when people need it most." He padded over and sat next to him, tucking his legs under the blanket. The flashlight cast a soft glow over their faces. "What are you reading?" Elon asked. "In just stories," X whispered. "I like the ones where people talk to God and God listens." Elon stared at the boy beside him. "You think he listens?" X nodded. "Only if you mean it." A beat of silence passed. Then, softly, X added, "I want to pray. But this time, not for you. With you." Elon's breath caught. He looked down at his hands, then at X's, small and warm. Slowly, without knowing how, he reached out. They held hands under the blanket. No script, no plan. Just a pause, and then a whisper. Elon didn't know what he was supposed to say. His throat was tight, his chest unsteady, but there was something about the way X waited, not pressuring, not demanding, just open, that gave him the courage to speak. No rehearsed speech, no clever metaphor, just breath and a few fragile words. "Thank you," he whispered, "for my son, and for him seeing me." He didn't say more. He didn't need to. In that dim silence, with a child's hand in his and a heart cracked wide open, Elon felt something shift. Not externally, internally. The kind of shift that doesn't make headlines or trend online, but moves like a quiet earthquake in the soul. He looked at X, whose eyes stayed gently closed. The boy gave a soft squeeze to his hand, then let go. X leaned against him, resting his head on Elon's shoulder. "You don't have to be perfect, Daddy," he said softly. "Just be here." That sentence, spoken by a 5-year-old with a flashlight and a paper Bible, shattered something Elon hadn't realized he was still guarding. He didn't respond right away. He couldn't. His vision blurred. He blinked hard, but the tears came anyway. Slow, not frantic. Not from pain, but from recognition. Here was a boy who didn't care about rockets or revenue, launches or leverage. He just wanted his dad to be present. Not perfect, not legendary, just present. They sat there together until X's breathing slowed and his body grew heavy with sleep. Elon gently lifted him in his arms and carried him back to bed. He didn't rush. He didn't think about tomorrow's calendar. He simply moved like a man who had rediscovered the weight of moments. After tucking X in, Elon didn't go back to his bedroom. or to his office filled with blueprints and glowing monitors. He walked to the closet and opened a different drawer, the one with a notebook he hadn't touched in years. Not the notebook of technical sketches, the one with blank pages, meant for thoughts, not formulas. He sat at the kitchen table, the same one where he'd first heard the echo of his son's prayer. Slowly, deliberately, he opened the notebook and picked up a pen. He didn't write about engineering constraints or mission protocols. He didn't analyze product cycles or quarterly forecasts. Instead, he wrote something simple. "Tonight, my son prayed with me, not for me, with me. And I said thank you, not just to him, but to something I'm not sure I understand yet." The words weren't tidy, the lines weren't even straight, but the act itself felt like an anchor dropped in still waters. Elon didn't write to explain. He wrote to feel, to remember, to capture the kind of moment that slips through fingers when life moves too fast. He kept writing, not pages, just a paragraph, then another, not because he had the time, but because he finally realized the cost of not making it. Somewhere outside, the wind shifted, and a soft rustling moved through the trees. The world hadn't changed. The deadlines were still waiting, the satellites still needed launching. But inside the quiet kitchen, under the soft hum of a light that flickered just once, a man who had once calculated escape velocity found something far harder to measure: the velocity of love. And it all began with a whisper in the dark. Something had changed in Elon Musk, but not in the ways most people would notice. His calendar was still packed. He still met with engineers before dawn and reviewed launch simulations before breakfast. He still solved problems no one else in the room could see coming. But beneath the routine, something quieter had taken root. A shift not in speed, but in vision. He began noticing things that had once blurred into the background. At the Tesla Design Lab, an intern hesitated before raising a hand. Elon paused the meeting, turned fully to him, and asked, "You look like you had a thought. What was it?" The intern blinked in surprise, stammered a suggestion. Elon didn't interrupt. He listened, nodded. "Let's test it," he said simply. That one sentence, "let's test it," changed something in the room. The team leaned in closer, not out of obligation, but out of curiosity. Elon's tone had softened, but his attention had sharpened. At the campus coffee kiosk, he noticed the barista always added a second sugar packet to his cup, though he never asked. "You remembered," he said one morning. She smiled, surprised. "You looked tired the first time. I just thought it might help." These moments weren't revolutionary, but they were real. And real, Elon was starting to realize, had its own kind of power. He still moved fast, but he no longer raced past people. He started asking different questions, not just, "Is this scalable?" or "What's the efficiency ratio?" but "What mattered to you while you built this?" and "What part of this made you proud?" The answers surprised him. Stories of childhood curiosity, late-night breakthroughs, and quiet dreams surfaced. For the first time in a long while, Elon felt like he was building not just machines, but meaning. Then one evening, X came into his office, hands behind his back like he was holding a treasure. "I made something," he said. Elon smiled. "Let's see it." X unfolded a piece of paper, a crayon drawing, full of stars with two stick figures underneath. One tall, one small. Above them, in bright yellow letters, "God sees us too." Elon stared at it, thumb brushing across the child's scrawl. It wasn't the words alone that moved him. It was the certainty, the unwavering belief that someone was watching, not to judge, but to care, to notice the unknown. For a moment, he didn't speak, just held the drawing like it was more valuable than any patent or prototype. Something had been trying to get his attention for a long time, not in headlines or high-stakes deals, but in whispers, drawings, and prayers. He placed the picture on the wall of his office, right above his desk. That night, he didn't power through reports or dive into code. He sat quietly, the hum of machines and the soft rustle of paper grounding him in the present. And for the first time in years, Elon Musk didn't just feel visionary. He felt seen. Elon Musk began each morning in a way that would have baffled his past self. Before coffee, before code, before check-ins and chaos, he opened an old notebook and wrote one sentence, just one. A memory, a moment, something he had truly seen or been seen in. Some mornings it was X's laughter echoing down the hallway. Other times it was the way an employee lingered after a meeting, unsure if their idea had been heard, and sometimes, though rarely, it was something about himself. His own reflection in the mirror, softened eyes staring back at him. He didn't call it journaling. He didn't try to label it at all. It was just a habit, a ritual, a grounding thread in days still full of deadlines and breakthroughs. But it changed how he moved, how he spoke, how he lingered. He stayed longer at dinner now, even if it meant replying to emails later. He paused when someone said something vulnerable instead of nodding and moving on. He held silence in conversations like it was valuable. Not a void to be filled, but a space to feel. At home, he found himself sitting on the porch with X, just watching the sun slip behind the hills. They didn't always talk. Sometimes they didn't need to. And when X did speak, it was never rushed. He asked questions slowly, gave answers even slower. Elon matched that rhythm now. He didn't interrupt. He let things settle. Then one evening, as stars began to appear in the twilight sky, X placed a hand on his chest and closed his eyes. He was praying again. Elon didn't move. He didn't ask what it was for, didn't try to interpret it or make sense of it. He just stayed, silent, present. Something about that stillness, the quiet, the calm, the weight of unspoken love, felt sacred, not because it was religious, but because it was real. That night, Elon passed by his son's room and paused once more at the door. The hallway was dim, the house at peace. He didn't need to listen this time. He already knew. This time, he wasn't trying to hear something. He was simply remembering that he'd finally learned how to stay. Some moments don't need applause. They don't need explanation, hashtags, or headlines. They just need to be lived. This wasn't a story about religion. It wasn't about proving a belief or changing the world. It was about something simpler, and somehow far more difficult. Being fully present. A boy's quiet prayer wasn't a sermon. It was a whisper in the dark, asking only for his father's smile. And that whisper echoed louder than any applause Elon Musk had ever heard. In a life driven by acceleration, achievement, and altitude, this was the moment that taught him to be still. Some things, Elon would later say, aren't meant to be explained, only lived. So if you find yourself moving too fast, missing too much, or wondering what truly matters, pause. There may be someone near you whispering love in silence, hoping you'll finally hear it. Maybe it's a child, a parent, a friend. Maybe it's someone who hasn't said the words, but is living them anyway. Don't rush past that moment. If this inspiring story moved you, share it. Let it be the whisper someone else needs to hear, because someone you love may be praying for you, even if you haven't heard it yet. And that changes everything.